Chapter 2. The Biggest Asshole in the Universe. Bad political systems on their own don't always make societies fail. Sometimes what's required for a real social catastrophe is for one or two ingeniously obnoxious individuals to rise to a position of great power. Get a 1 in a billion asshole in the wrong job, and a merely unfair system of government suddenly turns into 70s Guatemala, the Serbian despotate, the modern United States. Former Federal Reserve Chief Alan Greenspan is that 1 in a billion asshole who made America the dissembling mess that it is today. If his achievements were reversed, if this gnomish, bug-eyed party crasher had managed to convert his weird social hang-ups into positive accomplishments, then today we'd be calling his career one of the greatest political fairy tales ever witnessed. An unlikeliest of ugly ducklings who through sheer pluck, cunning, and determination made it to the top and changed the world forever. But that isn't what happened. Greenspan's rise is instead a tale of a gerbilish mirror-gazer who flattered and bullshitted his way up the Matterhorn of American power and then, once he got to the top, feverishly jacked himself off to the attentions of Wall Street for 20 consecutive years, in the process laying the intellectual foundation for a generation of orgiastic greed and overconsumption, and turning the Federal Reserve into a permanent bailout mechanism for the super-rich. Greenspan was also the perfect frontman for the hijacking of the democratic process that took place in the 80s, 90s, and the early part of the 2000s. During that time, political power gradually shifted from the elected government to private and semi-private institutions run by unelected officials whose sympathies were with their own class rather than any popular constituency. We suffered a series of economic shocks over the course of those years, and the official response from the institutions subtly pushed the country's remaining private wealth to one side, while continually shifting the risk and the loss to the public. This profoundly focused effort led to an intense concentration of private wealth on the one hand, and the steady disenfranchisement of the average voter and the taxpayer on the other, who advanced inexorably, head first, into the resultant debt. But the true genius of this blunt power play was that it was cloaked in a process that everyone who mattered agreed to call the apolitical, technocratic stewardship of the economy. Greenspan was the deadpan figurehead who, as head of the apolitical Federal Reserve, brilliantly played the part of that impartial technocrat. His impartiality was believable to the public precisely because of his long demonstrated unscrupulousness and political spinelessness. He sucked up with equal ferocity to presidents of both parties and courted pundit admirers from both sides of the editorial page, who all blessed his wrinkly pronouncements as purely nonpartisan economic wisdom. Greenspan's rise to the top is one of the great scams of our time. His career is the perfect prism through which one can see the twofold basic deception of American politics. A system that preaches sink or swim laissez-faire capitalism to most, but acts as a highly interventionist, bureaucratic welfare state for a select few. Greenspan pompously preached ruthless free market orthodoxy every chance he got, while simultaneously using all the powers of the state to protect his wealthy patrons from those same market forces. A perfectly two-faced man serving a perfectly two-faced state. If you can see through him, the rest of it is easy. Greenspan was born in 1926, just before the Depression, and boasts a background that reads a little like a generational prequel to the life of Woody Allen. A middle-class Jewish New Yorker from the outer rings of the city, a gaggle-eyed clarinet player who worshipped the big bands, used radio as an escape, obsessed over baseball heroes, and attended NYU, the latter with more success than Woody, eventually entering society in a state of semi-panicked indecision over what career to pursue. In his writings, Greenspan unapologetically recalls being overwhelmed as a young man by the impression left by his first glimpses of the upper classes and the physical trappings of their wealth. In his junior year of college, he had a summer internship at an investment bank called Brown Brothers Harriman. Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush, served there as a partner before and after his tenure in the U.S. Senate. The firm was literally on Wall Street near the stock exchange, and the morning I went to see Mr. Banks was the first time I'd ever set foot in such a place. Walking into these offices, with their gilded ceilings and roll-top desks and thick carpets, was like entering a sanctum of venerable wealth. It was an awesome feeling for a kid from Washington Heights. Greenspan left NYU to pursue a doctorate in economics at Columbia University, where one of his professors was economist Arthur Burns, a fixture in Republican administrations after World War II, who, in 1970, became chief of the Federal Reserve. Burns would be Greenspan's entree into several professional arenas, most notably among the Beltway elite. Remarkably, Greenspan's other great career rabbi was the objectivist novelist Ayn Rand, an anti-government zealot who was nearly the exact ideological opposite of a career bureaucrat like Burns. Greenspan met Rand in the early 50s after leaving Columbia, attending meetings at Rand's apartment with a circle of like-minded intellectual jerk-offs who call themselves by the ridiculous name the Collective, and who provided Greenspan the desired forum for social assent. These meetings of the Collective would have an enormous impact on American culture by birthing a crackpot anti-theology dedicated to legitimizing relentless self-interest, a grotesquerie called objectivism that hit the Upper East Side cocktail party circuit hard in the 50s and 60s. It is important to spend some time on the seriously demented early history of objectivism, because this lunatic religion, that should have choked to death in its sleep decades ago, would go on, thanks in large part to Greenspan, to provide virtually the entire intellectual context for the financial disasters of the early 21st century. Rand, the Soviet refugee who became the arch-priestess of the movement, was first of all a perfect ancillary character in the black comedy that is Greenspan's life. A bloviating, arbitrary, self-important pseudo-intellectual who recalls the gibberish-spewing academic twits in Woody Allen spoofs like No Kaddish for Weinstein and My Speech to the Graduates. In fact, some of Rand's quirks seem to have been pulled more or less directly from Allen's movies. Her dictatorial stance on facial hair. She regarded anyone with a beard or mustache as inherently immoral, recalled one Rand friend. Could have fit quite easily in the mouth of the Latin despot Vargas in Bananas, who demanded that his subjects change their underwear once an hour. A typical meeting of Rand's Collective would involve its members challenging one another to prove they exist. "How do you explain the fact that you're here?" one Collective member recalls asking Greenspan. "Do you require anything besides the proof of your own senses?" Greenspan played along with this horseshit, and in that instance reportedly offered a typically hedging answer. "I think that I exist. "But I don't know for sure," he reportedly said. "Actually, I can't say for sure that anything exists." The Woody Allen version would have read, "I can't say for sure that I exist, but I do know that I have to call 2 weeks in advance to get a table at Sardi's."